Welcome everyone to our Spring 2022 speaker series. I'm Gloria Kondrup, the Executive Director of the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography. This series is presented by the HMCT in collaboration with Art Center's Graphic Design Department and highlights the work of creatives from the world of graphic design. Our speaker today is Lavinia Lascaris, a graduate of Art Center's Master's Program in Graphic Design. The HMCT awarded her the Typography Fellowship, during which she worked with HMCT typographer-in-residence Lucy Roberts on a research project and exhibition installed in the HMCT gallery. After that, we offered Lavinia her current position of exhibition and graphic designer, where she curates and designs exhibitions, publications, and educational programs here at the center. Lavinia will talk about her journey as an artist and designer and will share some of her award-winning projects that she has produced as our exhibition designer. Thank you, Lavinia, for agreeing to share your work with everyone. Please welcome Lavinia Lascaris.
Thank you, Gloria, for inviting me to speak and for the introduction. It's an honor to be part of this speaker series and to be able to share some of the things that we do at HMCT. I'll go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Lavinia Lascaris, and I design the exhibitions and catalogs at the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography, which, in case anyone is not familiar, is the Typography Center at Art Center. But before taking a look at some of the exhibitions I've done, I thought I would start by talking a little bit about my background and some things that I'm interested in and that drive my practice. So these are the cities I've lived and worked in. And the reason I show this is because our experiences ultimately define us and inform the work we do. So I'm from Greece. I grew up in Athens. I went to school in the UK for a bachelor's in art design and media, where my focus was in fine art. For a while then, I worked at a gallery in Paris, assisting with inventory, archiving, and installation. I then did an extensive photography project in India, where I was based in Tamil Nadu, and from there traveled all around the country, collecting material and just documenting the experience. And then I switched gears a little bit and moved to Spain to pursue a career in dance, which had always been a passion of mine. And then went back to Greece, opened a small dance studio, and performed at dance events around Europe. Now, when I went back to Athens, it was right in the peak of the Greek financial crisis, during which there was a lot of uncertainty. People were expected to do very much for very little, and it was really hard to make plans for the future. So I left Greece again and came to LA to go back to school for graphic design. And all this bouncing around and experimenting with different professions, I can't say that I was driven by an ideology or a singular passion, but I think it was curiosity that was driving me. And if I'm being honest, a slight fear of commitment. If you don't commit to anything, you're not exposing yourself to failure, because by the time any expectations are built, you're off to the next thing. But when I came to LA, I wanted to see if I could commit to staying and investing in graphic design as a career choice. There's freedom and commitment. And I've been here for 6 years now, so far so good. So I came to Art Center first for night classes, and then for the new graduate graphic design program, which was launched that same year. So I was in the first class of MGX, the guinea pigs. And my focus was in print. And in case there are any MGX students here today who are working on their thesis, I want to say that I know what you're going through, and it's all going to be okay. After graduation, Gloria Kondrup, who is the executive director of the HMCT, offered me a full-time job as exhibition and graphic designer. And I'm still so grateful for that because I've been doing it for the last 4 years. And I love being in an academic environment. And I really enjoy designing exhibitions and working with a space. And I'm also lucky because in working at the Typography Center, we're not just concerned with typography, but also with the construct of language, which is a topic that I am particularly interested in. So I'll be talking more about that in a little bit. But like I said, the reason I wanted to share all of this is because the things you expose yourself to, the traveling, the different languages, the people, what you choose to learn about, all these things inform the work you do. And for me, this journey has helped me define how I relate to graphic design as a practice. And what are the concepts and themes that I feel drive this practice and that make design worth doing. And in that sense, design then functions as an agent, like a process to visually articulate and communicate these ideas. So for me, the main substance of that process is academic research and the things that I learn and then leverage to design an identity or a book or a space. And Art Center has a ton of resources for that. So today, as I go through some projects, I'll be sharing some of these themes and ideas and some research findings, just stuff that I found interesting. Showing final polished projects is okay, but there's always interesting stuff that happens in the background that doesn't make it to the final, to what the public sees. So I'd like to use this presentation as an opportunity to share some of that stuff as well. So one of the first exhibitions that I worked on at HMCT was Mike Sierra Tango, an exhibition about multi-script typefaces, which I worked on with Simon Johnston, who is the creative director at HMCT. Multi-script typefaces are type families that include more than one script. And the way this usually works at HMCT is Gloria will come to me with a topic. In this case, she said she wanted us to do an exhibition about non-Latin typefaces. And then I kind of take it from there. And that's another thing I like about working at HMCT is that we're a very small team. So when working on an exhibition project, I often get to do all of it: the research, the curation, the design, and the installation. And of course, I don't do this by myself. I have plenty of help and support. So for Mike Sierra Tango, initially we were referring to other scripts as non-Latin, which early in my research, I discovered that the correct term is multi-script because non-Latin implies priority in Latin over other scripts. So that was important. But our main challenge with the show was, how do we design an exhibition with no existing physical artifacts? How do we demonstrate the relationship between the different scripts in a typeface? And what type of display makes sense for this type of exhibition? So this is the identity for the exhibition. This modular system of squares work as containers for information and for the subtitle that flips in different languages. And for the space, we followed this modularity by displaying big type specimens in the form of these long panels that hung from the ceiling. Each panel showed one script. So when we showed 4 together like this, for example, the far left one was the Latin panel, and the other 3 would vary depending on the typeface. And this modular system was our way of showing how the characteristics of a type family can be maintained across many scripts. We featured 12 contemporary typefaces by type foundries from around the world. We showed between 2 and 4 scripts for each type family, which covered between 15 or 16 scripts in total. Some of the designers wanted to design their own specimens, so I sent them the specs for the panels, and others were designed in-house with the help of Sydney Ree and Zeke Waddles, who were graphic design students at the time. And our gallery is on the ground floor, and it has these big windows that are facing the street. So when designing a space, we also considered what people will see when they walk by. This is the exhibition catalog that we published after the show, where, again, the design follows this modular system. And then a few months after the opening of the show, we were invited to exhibit a condensed version at the A-Type conference in Tokyo. So Gloria and I packed the panels and flew them to Tokyo and installed them there at the conference. And all this was obviously very exciting, but I think the hardest part of setting up an exhibition is finding a curatorial point of view. And I can't do that without in-depth research, without understanding the various relationship between language and script. Not all languages have a script. Some have adopted scripts from other languages centuries into their existence. Like Quechua, and others use more than one script, like Serbian, that uses Latin and Cyrillic. And I mentioned my interest in language, so this was a great opportunity to geek out on stuff like the difference between script and writing system. Latin is a script, but English and Spanish are writing systems that use Latin as their basis. Another distinction is the difference between character and glyph, which are terms that are often used interchangeably. So a character is a letter in a script, like ABC. A glyph in typography is the specific design of a character. So here, for example, are 5 glyphs that represent the character A. And I can't see anybody, so I can't tell if this stuff excites you as much as it excites me. I'm fascinated by these kinds of things, how languages are constructed, the etymology of words, because language shapes society. The next project I want to share is Plan B, Spirit of the Bauhaus, which I worked on with Simon Johnston and Carolina Trigo. It was an exhibition of student projects inspired by the history and influence of the Bauhaus on the occasion of its 100th anniversary in 2019. So Caro and Simon led the test lab program in Berlin, where the students did the research and conceptualized their projects. And then when they returned, I sort of joined the team to help put the exhibition together. This was the identity for the show, for which we used this abstract geometric typeface designed by Hampton Dunlap, an art center student at the time. And then we appropriated some of the glyphs as colorful spatial design elements. The challenge with this exhibition was making it all feel unified, because all the projects were very different from each other and were spread across other spaces in the building, not just the main gallery. So having these shapes painted on the walls and in vinyl on the windows was one of the ways we indicated that they all belong to the same experience. And then in curating an exhibition, it's important to think about which projects work well together and complement each other visually and conceptually, so that in navigating the space, you're offering the audience a narrative as well as a strong visual experience. And of course, there are challenges along the way. Like when we were preparing this exhibition, there was one student who did a short film, and she was shooting this huge fish tank full of fake blood in the HMCT classroom, which cracked and spilled red liquid all over the space. So, there are some curveballs here and there, but we deal with them and move on. But anyway, if you're interested in learning more about the program, we produced a video where Caro, Simon, and a few students talk about it and their experience in Berlin, which is available on the HMCT YouTube channel. The next project I want to share today is an exhibition that is now showing in our gallery called Baby Ink Twice, which features letterpress posters from the HMCT archive, designed and printed by Dafi Kühne, who is a letterpress designer from Switzerland. And for this, I would like to show some of the process that goes into putting together an exhibition. So in case there are any students here who are interested in exhibition design, I've illustrated the various components that make up an exhibition. You have the curation, so what are the contents of the exhibition and what is the concept that ties them all together? The identity, meaning how is the show visually represented, which usually starts with a logo. Then the design of the space, meaning the materials used for the displays, any navigation tools, and the ways that the identity is applied in the space. Then you have your texts that verbally describe what the exhibition is about, your assets for promotion, meaning any designs for social media, websites, etc. And finally, any printed material, which could be a guide, a curator's note, or anything that could be useful to the audience during and after their visit. And all these need to inform each other and come together to tell the same story. So in a case of a poster exhibition like Baby Ink Twice, the first thing I do is take inventory of all the work that's available. This helps me get familiar with the material and becomes like a reference during the curation stage. During this phase, I look for overarching themes in the work, the overall aesthetics, what is the work saying? And my starting point, and that's my starting point before going into the research, where I then begin investigating the artist's background, their processes and context of their work, and try to look for any references that I can leverage from my designs. And one important thing to keep in mind when designing an exhibition is that the role of the designer is to reflect and frame the work, not be the work. So if my design competes with the content, I've over-designed. So I always try to keep that in mind. And that was one of my challenges here. What can I design that will reflect the dynamism, playfulness, and materiality of these posters without competing with them? Also, how do I represent letterpress without romanticizing it and falling into cliches? And then how can I activate the space so that I'm not just pinning posters on the wall? Then I'll start experimenting with the identity. I might start playing with some analog ideas. I'll look at how the words and letters and the title relate to each other. But this stage is about playing with the type and iterating and reiterating until I have a design that works and that will have a strong presence online as well as in the gallery space. And then this was the final design, where the mirrored type is a subtle representation of the typesetting process in letterpress. And then I added a short animation with some posters rotating on top of the identity as a sort of fun way to offer some context when we advertised on social media. And while designing the identity, I'm also working on designing the space. For this exhibition, I was working with my colleague Josue Molina and discussing how to treat the gallery space. And again, we wanted to convey this sense of materiality and playfulness. So we were sketching up a type of stand for the posters to hang from while thinking about materials what type of materials would be relevant to the work, available, and within budget. Our budget for these exhibitions is limited, so we have to be smart and find ways to use materials that we can afford in creative ways that also make sense for the subject matter. Then we'll start prototyping. Here we've tried different types of boards and also different materials for the base. And we liked these stands, so then decided that it might be nice if all the posters were mounted on these boards, and that maybe that would help unify them. And then once we've made some decisions for the space, I then used the elevations of the gallery to curate the posters. I tried to identify if there's any work that could be grouped together, maybe based on client or size or year. And I test out different juxtapositions so that each group of posters or each wall offers a unified dynamic composition. And sometimes if I'm not sure how something is going to look or I can't make up my mind, I'll do a rough mock-up in Photoshop to help me visualize it better. And then depending on the show, I might have to do some floor plan sketches. Here, I needed to determine the number and positions of the stands in thinking about how visitors would navigate the space. So by the time we start installing, we already know exactly where everything is going to go. We print out the final elevation sketches and use them as a reference for installing the work. And still, even though everything is planned, it's sometimes hard to not question some decisions. When we were installing the show, I heard the space be referred to as Santa's workshop and a skate park, which made me think, shit, did I go too far? Is this too much? But then when we cleared out the gallery from all the wood scraps and installed the posters, I think the boards became less about themselves and more of an agent to tie the exhibition together. So this is what the exhibition looked like at the end. We have our title against the window, which is repeated on the other side so that we get a view of the identity from the street as well. The posters are scattered on the walls. We thought that that would create a more dynamic composition and would also engage the viewer a bit more actively because things are hung in different heights. And then you can't see it here very well, but at the bottom right of these boards, there's a small QR code that each links to a process video showing how each poster was made. So that was like a small digital component. And the show will be on for a few more weeks. So if you're interested, I think Art Center students and faculty can just walk in. And for everyone else, I think you have to make an appointment. But you can reach out to me or HMCT and we can help set it up. The last project I want to share today is of a slightly different nature. It was born out of the research for the multi-script typefaces exhibition when I was learning about Unicode and started thinking of emoji as a type of script. And that led me to think of the relationship between language and technology and to consider the forces that are shaping language and how these forces are affecting how we communicate. So I did a deep dive and started learning more about this and collecting research material while thinking of what an exhibition that explored the relationship between language and technology would look like, what artifacts we could show, what themes we would address, and how the space would be designed. So this is an ongoing work in progress research project, and I want to share just a few selected findings and thoughts from my research that I found interesting and some projects that I found interesting that comment on this topic. So think of this as a kind of sneak peek into the early stages of an exhibition that hasn't happened yet. So one of the most interesting concepts I came across during this research is from a book by Gretchen McCulloch called Because Internet, where she refers to language as an open source project, which is such a nice way to think about language as this organic, living, constantly evolving thing that everyone is contributing to. And this is more obvious now and is happening faster now more than ever because of technology and all the online communities with their posts and captions and comments and texts and threads. And so in that sense, the threads where so much conversation happens and so many opinions are exchanged are almost like a type of nonfiction writing. They are like miniature essays, a sort of new literary genre of participatory writing. And I know that there are people that are a bit highbrow about the ways that language is treated online, but based on what I've learned, I prefer to view it as a parallel, like a branch of language that's not replacing or challenging established rules of writing, but just lives alongside them. And related to this is a project by Tiga Brain and Sam Levine called Get Well Soon, which is a website that lists alphabetically all the comments posted on the GoFundMe medical fundraisers form. And what I like about this type of project is that I see it as a type of sociological study that archives, in this case, how we express solidarity online. Next, I want to talk about memes, which are of huge cultural significance and could be seen as cultural portions of the zeitgeist, meaning that in a sense, they reflect shared thoughts, feelings, and opinions in a very blunt and humorous way. And, you know, there's a spectrum to this. There are memes that are cultural junk food, and others that can function as a form of protest, as today's version of political posters. And there's this great little book by Meta Haven that addresses this idea of memes as a new strategy of protest that can challenge institutional power. And since we're on the topic of memes, lolcats became a thing back in the mid-2000s. And I mentioned them because with lolcats came lol speak, which is a kind of like a variety of English that can be described as what cats would sound like if they could speak English. And that became so popular within a community of internet users that in a sense, we can think of lolspeak as a type of dialect. And that dialect defined that community. It's this type of manipulation of language, although may sound ridiculous, reveals a lot about who we are, our sense of humor, and has the potential of bringing people together. And there's this project called the Lolcat Bible Translation Project, which was a wiki-based website and a book that parodied the entire Bible in lolspeak. And I asked HMCT to buy it because I found it super relevant and hilarious. So now it's in our book collection. Another concept that's kind of up for debate is whether emoji can function as a universal language. And, you know, emoji came into existence because it was hard to convey emotion and tone through text. So they are a supplement to language that was born out of necessity. And some symbols are universally understood. An example of that is this graphic novel by Chu Bing that is written entirely in symbols and icons and can be read like a regular book. But then for emoji to truly qualify as a universal language, it would have to cover complex concepts. And those concepts require levels of abstraction. And so with each level of abstraction, it loses its universal status. And then I just want to show this website that was launched in 2013 by Matthew Rothenberg called Emoji Tracker, which tracks emoji usage on Twitter in real time. This last part focuses less on the linguistic side of language and more on the systemic bias that exists in the tools and platforms that we use to communicate. Discrimination by algorithm happens in a vacuum, or in other words, there's no such thing as an unbiased algorithm, because what is generated by machines still comes from human input. So I was studying how these biases manifest themselves into the tools that we use and the ethical implications behind them. And so an example of that bias is found in predictive text. So your phone suggests words as you type, right? But then there are certain words that it finds taboo, that it will not help you complete, like abortion or terrorism. And then speaking of messed up algorithms, I want to share a video that I made that was inspired by a Vice article that said that if you type random syllables or letters in Google Translate, it will come up with absurd translations. It's an example of what happens when machine learning attempts to make sense out of nonsense. So I experimented with that to see if I could get any fun results. And then when I did, I screen recorded it. So I'll go ahead and play the video.
Ag, go, agig, around, bad, agig, bad, agglomerates, haha, for you, haggard, for you, hassle, for you guys, hassle, for you guys, hassle, for you guys, hassle, your favorite, hassle free, your favorite, hassle free, your favorite parts, thumbs up on your own, the best of the best for you, thumbs up, totemigagage tag, totemigagage tag, thumbs up to the thugs, thumbs up with the brakes, thumbs up on your own, thumbs up to the thugs, tougher than you may be, thumbs up to the thugs, toggleig, thumbs up with the brakes, thumbs up on your own, thumbs up to the thugs, thumbs up on your own, thumbs up with your little self, thumbs up to the thugs, thumbs up to the thighs, to make your own adventure.
And I'll stop it here. You get the idea. So this was me typing aga gaga gaga and randomly selecting a translation from Somali to English. And here's another example with different letters. So here I typed OA and translated it from Hawaiian to English. And a few months after I recorded that video, I tried to recreate the results by typing the same letters and got different results. So the machine is learning, or in this case, really doesn't know what to do with itself. All these references are on a channel on Arena, and I can drop a link in the chat in case anyone is interested to go and dig around. This research is still ongoing, but this was more or less the basis for what became an educational program called Captcha This, which we are still developing together with several Art Center faculty, Maggie Henry, Gloria Kondrup, Christine Bound, Robbie Knock, Brad Bartlett, and Roy Tatum. And it was framed as the disruptive power of emergent technologies on traditional language systems. So in other words, how the internet and all these online platforms, as well as machine learning and artificial intelligence, are affecting the way we communicate, and what are the subconscious patterns behind the language we produce every day. This is the identity for Captcha This, which was designed to include several digital vernacular references. And these are the designs announcing the lecture series that launched the program last fall. And this is an installation currently at our storefront gallery that is meant to serve as a window to the program once we have all the components of the program fully developed. And the design for this started when the school was still closed due to the pandemic and people were not allowed on campus. So I came up with a solution to project content onto the windows so that it could be experienced from the street. And the plan is to eventually have an exhibition for Capture This in our main gallery space. We're still working on our programming, but I think we have it scheduled for sometime in 2023. So stay tuned. That's all I got. Thank you so much for listening. I know it's not easy for students to take time away from your projects, so I appreciate you being here, and everybody else. I hope you found this interesting and informing, and I'm open to answering any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lavinia. We're really happy to have you here as well. Really, really nice exhibitions. I really wish I got to see the plant being in person, but I joined Art Center during the midst of the pandemic. But I have seen the Daffy Clinic in person. And when I saw it, it really made me question the differences and boundaries between exhibition design, graphic design. And especially after presentation, I can really see the common marks between those two, such as space, movement, conceptuality, and the relationship from one artwork to the next. Overall, really, really awesome works. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Lavinia, I think that you actually demonstrate that graphic design is about spatial design. And I know that we can say Art Center in the graduate program is starting an exhibition or spatial track, maybe this fall, which of course I think you'll be teaching in it. I hope. It's been kind of a long journey. I mean, but I think it's what I'm fascinated by, and if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat, but it really shows that instead of siloing yourself, you're not siloed at all. You're expressive in your ability to move within media. What would you say, though, has been your most difficult challenges? Assuming that I ask you to do everything, what's been your most difficult challenges?
I'm not sure. I have to think about it. Every exhibition has its own challenge. Like for Plan B, installing 15 different transdisciplinary projects that all have their own needs, that was hard to do, especially because there was, very short amount of time to do that. So it was also physically exhausting, but it was also really, really fun to do. I don't know if I could say what was the challenge. It all has there are always challenges, but I've always felt like I have support. So, when challenges appear, I don't feel like it doesn't feel like a sink or swim.
And what I notice, and I can say this, that Lavinia, you're always able to resolve, or you're able to learn what you need to learn in order to achieve, whether you're designing a typeface, which you did for the Abram Games exhibition, which of course you should expand. And I think there are a lot of technology challenges that you face, and you're constant. I think that's it's one component that I think students and everyone should understand. Technology is going to always change. And I know that we talk about this all the time, and I say, don't worry about the technology, or don't worry about how are we going to get this done. Think about what is it you want to express, and then we'll worry about how we're going to get it done somehow.
Yeah, and it's,
I've
been trying to learn code for a while now. I've not succeeded yet, but especially when you work in an environment with so many creative people, it's knowing what's possible to do with technology, even if you don't know how to do it yourself, because then you can work with other people who do have that knowledge and sort of come together produce what you envisioned.
Did you ever think that this would be your path when you were a graduate student?
No, exhibition design was not offered as an option. And when Lucy and David were here and I did the fellowship and they did the residency, that was one of the most fun times of my life. And I have to give Lucy credit for also teaching me what the process is of putting together an exhibition and how to do research for it, especially when you're not showing a set, materials that already exist. So, how do you collect the research, and in what ways do you think about how this can become a story that you can communicate in a space? So I'm very, very grateful to you, Gloria, for giving me the opportunity to do that, but also to Lucy and David for teaching me that stuff.
And along with exhibition design, right, Lavinia, comes, when you have the budget, comes the catalog design. And then the book design of the exhibition. A lot of our faculty here at Art Center have done a huge amount of book design based upon exhibitions. So again, I think it's a highly commercial and a great way to make a living. And if you're interested in the arts, like Lavinia is, obviously, through her dance and her experience, it's nice to work with material that you're interested in. I think your interest in typography and language has really expanded since you started doing this for us. And I think, Lavinia, you're a great example of someone who has gone through the graduate program at Art Center, who took what you've learned and said, okay, now I have to shape my own programming. I think it's really interesting that you've taken what you've learned in graduate school, and then now you've developed it into what you think is your own career path. And also, again, you said something very interesting about, commitment, right? People think that what they're doing today has to be forever. And that's not true. Everything is a step. And this is a step to, perhaps, Lavinia, a bigger gallery, a museum. We are working again with the Greater Art Center exhibitions program. Because right now, Lavinia didn't mention, but we have a huge exhibition program at Art Center College of Design. And Lavinia is part of that group, and the HMCT Gallery is part of that group. So as the exhibition programs grow now at Art Center, Lavinia's role can grow at Art Center. What are exhibitions at Art Center? And I think all students of faculty and people from the outside should take advantage of such a huge amount of exhibition and varied exhibition that one can see at Art Center College of Design. It's not just the HMCT, it's the Williamson Gallery, it's the Mullen Gallery, it's the gallery at the 870 building, it's downtown LA right now. And as we work more in this is one of the groups that are very collaborative at Art Center. Exhibition design is very collaborative. And I think it's very important that we present to the public the varied subject matter that interests people at Art Center. And also that's just interesting in the world of art and design. And someone asked, are printed books dying?
No.
What do you think, Lavinia?
What I think has happened is that with technology, books have reached a new elite status because they're more expensive. So they're not dying. They've just changed how they're perceived and how their use has changed. But they're more of a they have an elite status.
Object.
Yeah, it's an object.
It's very interesting. Harant just asked, hi Harant, how are you? Is reading dying? That's an interesting question, whether or not, reading is dying. I think how people read information might be different. Instead of reading a printed newspaper, maybe you read your newspaper in an ebook. You're still reading, But the book is always, and that's another presentation, but Lavinia agrees there's a certain object, the book is an object. People like the book as an object, right? There's still something very tactile about holding a book versus reading something on the screen.
Right, you can't
And
feel an
someone,
emboss on the screen.
yeah, you can't feel an emboss. I mean, Samantha Fleming says, and I know, hi Samantha, is that, you know, certain cultures reading is waning. You know, and for other cultures, it's still very important, or how we read, or
I
what
think
we read.
that
I think
now is also a lot about like when we read often, it's more about scanning the page. I think we're learning to do that very well. And I'm not sure how much is lost in that, you know, scan reading. But I can see like younger people, how well they do that, how fast they can absorb so much from a full written page. Yeah, so with new types of language, I guess come new ways of reading also.
And I think that's part of exhibitions now too. And as we move into developing capture, which we hope will have our exhibition and programming up in definitely in 2023, it's just a different way of relating to language also. How you experience language, you know, and part of it is how you experience language and, you know, in VR, how you, I think that your research into a machine and the, you know, machine-based learning is definitely biased depending upon who the programmer is. So we have to remember that just because it's a machine, it doesn't mean that it's apolitical, number one, that it's has a certain purity of thought in it. In fact, it doesn't. You know, I think it's very, you know, it's going to be even more relevant as more people are moving into a virtual world, which we know it's already happened. But our appreciation, and thank you for this, for the written word and the artifact of a book, it's still relevant. And the artifact of seeing an exhibition, it's so different, isn't it? When we spent a year and a half having virtual exhibitions, is so different than going and experience an exhibition. To see the size, I mean, when you look at your posters on the screen in your research, they're so small. They're like little thumbnails, and that's not the way to see actual work, right? So all we can do is about, you know, all we can say is go see actual work. It makes, size makes a difference.
What advice do you have for undergraduate student who is interested in exhibition design?
What advice do I have? I would say go to as many exhibitions as you can. And when you go to exhibitions, don't just look at the work that's installed, look at how the work is installed as well.
Yeah, look at the narrative that it's creating. Exhibitions, and I think that's important, that you see as many as you can, varied types of exhibitions, whether it's technology based or, but that's a great question. I think going and seeing is important. I mean, next thing you know, everyone's going to be going and, you know, taking pictures and thinking, how did this work? You know, but there's so much to see out there. And living in a large city like Los Angeles, Pasadena, there's a lot to see. And so there's no excuse not to go see large exhibitions, to go see small gallery exhibitions.
I would also
individual
say,
artists.
Online exhibitions, especially since the pandemic, have received a lot of attention. And I think that is also a growing platform for how work is shown. So that would be another thing that I would keep an eye out for. Also, the relationship between physical exhibitions with their digital avatars how physical exhibitions are now represented in online. So there's that relationship, I think, that is still forming itself. People are experimenting with it.
Absolutely. Alan, any more comments or questions for Lavinia?
Yes, I do have one personally. In your grad thesis, Idiot, you address the notion of concealment and protection through the ubiquity and you address it through the surrendering of your own privacy in order to reinstate it. What ultimately led you to pursue this unique and paradoxical subject on privacy? And what were some challenges you faced doing it?
Where do I start with the challenges? So our privacy is challenged all the time and more because as technology evolves, there's, ethics are always trying to catch up, but they're always a few steps behind. So the ethics of privacy are never completely caught up with the technology that is affecting our privacy. So I was kind of curious about that, and then I had done a research, some research for a editorial project on camouflage, and I thought like how can I leverage camouflage to help protect my privacy? And I think that to answer the question about the challenges, the main challenge with doing a project with no brief is that there's no brief. So, the sky's the limit. You can do anything. So narrowing it down and finding what it is you're trying to say. So after you've done all your research and you have the topics that you're interested in, then for the longest time, it feels like you're doing this project blindly. You don't quite know what you're saying. You have some opinions, but they're not formulated yet. And then you don't know how to visually articulate. So and this is for every project, until at least for me, until I know what I'm doing, this phase of, the unknown is sometimes epically uncomfortable. So I think that was the challenge, just kind of being comfortable in that space of the unknown and keep feeling and being motivated to produce work until eventually it, makes sense. And you're like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is good. I can work with that. I'm happy with that. I feel confident. I can sleep at night. Not to be dramatic, but it was challenging. It was also challenging because we had such a short time to put it all together. Because we were the first group in, we were given 1 term to do our thesis, so everything was in overdrive during that time, and I have no regrets, obviously, and I'm grateful for that experience. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That was great. I think a really, really interesting thesis. I haven't seen anything similar to it so far.
It was fun. Again, in hindsight, it was fun.
A lot of work and nights with no sleep, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, that's the drill at Art Center.
And we're perfectly on time. Thank you so much, Lavinia, for coming. It's really inspirational. Glad to see
Gloria, thank you,
about
Alan.
exhibition design.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and for the kind words in the comments.
Thank you, Lavinia.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you in class. Bye. Thank you,
See you
Lavinia.
in class.